Hello, everyone. I'm Cord Bloomquist, coming to you from Tallest Tree Digital, where we've released our latest think tank or public policy SEO rankings. I wanted to tell you a little bit about those today, why you might care about those, what these rankings mean, the limitations to them, and how you might go about improving your search engine optimization if you have the desire to get more traffic, more people looking at public policy material that you put out there. So let's take a look at these. All right. So we talk a little bit about why we put this together, how it works, the statistics that we gather, but let me just get all the way down to the table here and show you which groups are ranking well and what inputs we take into consideration. So you can see here, the inputs are highlighted in blue. So we look at your total expenses. Using this made our prediction curve much more accurate. The other things that we could take into consideration are your overall domain rating. So that's a score from 0 to 100. You can see that here. And that takes into consideration both the quantity and the quality of the links that you have. So raw backlinks alone is not a very good predictor of whether you're going to be doing well in search or not, because you could have millions upon millions of backlinks from the same website or from hundreds of different websites that are all lower quality. That said, we also look at the raw number of backlinks because it tends to be that those groups with just an enormous number of links, like you can see the orders of magnitude variation that we have here, 1,200 total links pointing to a site versus 1.3 million versus 6.3 million. You know, when we put those into our formula, the predictions became even better. Finally, we look at index pages. So this is the number of pages that Google is aware of that you have published on the web. And that's a key thing to look at. So one of the first things you can use this guide for is just looking at that number of index pages. You can also find this by typing in site : and then your domain name. So key to pay attention to that, because what we often find is that groups that are really suffering from a small amount of traffic compared to what they think they ought to be getting are getting that because Google simply isn't seeing their content. So let me bring up another slide that I have ready for you here. So Google can't index what it can't crawl. So if you notice that your pages are down, you may be suffering something similar to this client of ours that we've worked with over the past year. They relaunched a website around April of 2023. You can see the impressions and the clicks for that old website are in the light purple that you see on the left part of this graph. And we see that drop off in impressions and clicks. And a drop off in impressions and clicks is pretty common when you move from one website to another. So they moved from one domain to another and they changed their website platform. And whenever you change either one really, but especially both at the same time, you're going to see a drop off in traffic. It's simply because Google has to re-index and kind of figure out what your website is all about when you move from one domain or one web platform to another. And doing both at once is like very jarring. And Google wants to make sure that it doesn't want to promote the same pages that it was promoting if those pages have changed in some significant way. Right? It's sort of like suddenly a vendor starts shipping you different product. You want to make sure that the product, okay, it's changed color or it's changed packaging. Is it still the same thing? Once you verify that it is, you'll show that product to the customer again. Google's doing the same thing here. If you look at this slide, traffic falls from maybe 3,000 clicks a day in the middle of the week on good days, sometimes as high as 4,500, down to about 1,000, 1,500, sometimes less than 1,000, right? And it just doesn't recover and doesn't recover and doesn't recover for weeks. And that's really atypical. We would see something recover sometimes within 4 or 6 weeks, maybe a few months, but just was not happening. But we found that there was a problem with indexation in this site. So this site had moved from a paginated style of going back through their backlog of content to infinite scrolling. And Google famously doesn't click and it doesn't scroll. Google only discovers content by loading an HTML document and then finding Ahref references to links within it. So that's a little bit of code specificity there. But suffice to say, if you have to scroll to find new links on a page, Google is not going to find those things that's below the first scroll action. So what ended up happening for this client is that a huge portion of their website was simply invisible to Google. So what Google can't crawl, what it can't see, it's not going to index. So we recommended a fix to their developer deployed that fix. And within a week of that deployment, as you can see here by the chart, impressions spiked way back up. Clicks went from about 1,000 a week to well over 2,000, and traffic has continued to grow. And this chart is only recent as of, or current as of the end of March, and I think that traffic has grown even more since then. Here's a chart from a similar, it's actually a sort of sister site of the site that we had worked on. And this is interesting in just how staggering the numbers are. They had gone from about 45,000 pages being in Google's index to, once we had made that similar fix, and you can see that the time frame's a little different here, but around this area here is where that fix was deployed. The number of pages indexed went up by 10, and then it went up by 20 times. So it went from something like 45,000 to over 800,000 pages being in the index. So that's pretty dramatic difference, right? The difference in traffic in this case wasn't as dramatic, but the difference in indexing was sort of staggering. But another thing that can influence the traffic that you're getting isn't just raw technical problems. It can also be things like, is your website organized effectively? So here's an example. Over the past several years, we've been working with the Federalist Society, and we've taken their content and reorganized it around court cases. So much of their commentary is about cases before federal district courts, federal appeals courts, the Supreme Court. It follows those cases as they sort of wind their way through the judicial system. And we took their cases or their commentary rather, and scanned it using a thing called natural language processing. Found every time that a commentary piece might mention, Kelo versus New London or Marbury versus Madison or whatever. I can't remember that many Supreme Court cases, but we took an initial list, worked on that, and I think our initial list was something like 150 or 200 cases, and the Federal Society didn't rank in the top 100 for any of them. And now they rank in the top 100 for maybe 150 out of those 200 cases. And in many instances, they rank in the top 10. And that's why they're now getting web traffic to those pages, and why traffic to their site overall has doubled. But it's not only traffic coming to those new case pages that we've created, but it's coming to all the individual commentary pieces as they get published. And that's because Google now sees that the Federal Society's website follows a theme, right? It's not just lots and lots of pages about legal minutia with nothing in common between them, but rather it has 50 pages on Kelo v. New London. It has hundreds of pages on cases like Roe v. Wade, for example, right? So when someone is searching for Kelo v. New London, Federal Society is much more likely to rank with one of those pages somewhere in the top 10 because they're shown to be authorities on that topic, right? They've written about it in depth. Google doesn't want to promote somebody who's written about something once. Maybe they will if you have hundreds or thousands of links pointing to that one page. But when you've written about something over and over and over again, and now you've got the latest bit of commentary on that, you're going to do really well. So this is really powerful for think tanks, and we've done it across many different client websites, but this is just sort of like the easiest to understand example of this sort of thing. But another thing you might do to increase your traffic, and let me go back to the study and show you who's at number one. We see the Tax Foundation at the top here. The amount of traffic that they generate, 849,000, so close to 1 million organic views in 1 month. And again, this might be a smaller number because these are from a third-party source, and I've heard people again and again tell me, boy, you're really undercounting our traffic. But we do think that we're consistently undercounting everyone's traffic, so we still think the numbers are valid. But yeah, the Tax Foundation is doing way better than what our numbers would predict. They have a pretty modest budget compared to a lot of the groups that we work with. They have a very large number of pages, but it's not as large as many groups out there. And the number of backlinks that they have are smaller, but they have a really solid domain rate. Anyway, the math does what the math does, but it certainly wouldn't predict this sort of giant, almost 850,000 number. But the reason they do so well is because they make pages like this one. This shows you the 2024 tax brackets. They make a page like this every year, and it just breaks down the simplest things that somebody in search would want to know about their taxes, right? Or tax brackets. What tax bracket am I in? What should I expect to pay? Well, what's the personal exemption? What's the alternative minimum tax? Oh, earned income tax credit, child tax credit, all of these things that can be found in other places like the IRS's website. The Tax Foundation consistently outranks like the official source of this information because it just does a better job of creating a more useful page. Lots of think tanks have incredibly valuable information, but they have it locked away in PDFs that Google can index, but they're kind of like a undifferentiated soup of text that Google can't deal with. And it doesn't like to serve PDFs to users typically because users don't want to see them. They want to see web pages, especially if they're browsing on a phone. And think tanks often have information that's just too verbose for search results. Like search results should kind of resemble like Wikipedia. It should be an overview. So just like you would repurpose a study or a white paper into an op-ed or a speech that you might give at a conference, you want to repurpose things for search. So you might have information or piece out there that has lots of great information in it, but it needs to be simplified, condensed, made into tables, made into something that presents fast answers to people, and that maybe refers them to the magazine length piece that you've written about it, or the study, or even an op-ed that's like more political and pushing a specific policy prescription. Searchers typically aren't looking for that. They're looking for an answer to a specific question. Again, the devil's in the details with a lot of these things, but usually, broadly speaking, that's the case. So I hope this all was useful and makes sense, and that you understand that if you look at this list and see groups that are similar to you, maybe of similar size, that cover similar issues, you say, why the heck aren't we getting as much traffic as them? Why are they outperforming where the curve sort of says they should be? And why are we underperforming? Why are we so many pages back on this list? The answer may be Google can't make sense of what's going on your site. It can't see it. A lot of it is opaque to it. Maybe Google can view all the pages on your site, but it doesn't really get what you're about. Like, is there a theme here? Is there a commonality? Like, what keyword can we pair with all this stuff that you've written about? Or it may be the case that you just haven't written any content that really makes sense for a search audience. So think about that. We like to say you need to design like an architect, you need to organize like a librarian, and you need to target like a marketer. Yeah, I hope this video was useful. I hope it explains the study well. And I hope to be posting more of these soon. So thank you, everybody.